In this video, I will show you how to add Firebase authentication to your React Native application so you can protect the inside area of your app. Hey everyone, what's up? This is Simon from galaxies.dev back with a quick tutorial on using Firebase, because Firebase is still the most used backend as a service for tons of applications, and today we're gonna add this to a React Native application. And I already did the first steps, so you don't have to wait for 5 minutes of npm installation. So go ahead and create a new Expo app. So I'm using Expo because it's really the best way. If you are unsure, check out my other video about using Expo or not Expo. So create Expo app Galaxies Fire, and I'm of course using the TypeScript template. So we're gonna have some fun with TypeScript. Within the project, the most important part then, so probably you already have that project, is to install Firebase. So we're gonna install Firebase from Expo Firebase. There's actually a package using Firebase. You can check that out if you want to as well. It all begins by adding this. However, we also need some sort of navigation for our application. So I install React Navigation Native and the native stack, and additionally the React Native screens and safe area context packages, which usually help us to build our app. Now, if you don't have a Firebase project yet, no problem. Head over to firebase.com, create a free account, and let's add a project. I'm gonna call this React Native Auth video. And hit continue. It doesn't really matter if you use this or not. I don't really want this right now, so I'm disabling it. What we can do in our app is already run npx expo start, which brings up the expo. So I can now install this on my device, or I just hit I, because I want to see this on my iOS simulator. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna add Firebase to our app. To do this, we're gonna have to select one of these. If you're using a native iOS or Android app, you can add the native ones, but usually we're using the web way. So I'm gonna call this web app, it doesn't really matter. And then we can add the Firebase SDK based on a configuration that we get. So this block is the important part here. Now, to use that, we get back to our React Native application, and at the, do we wanna put it at the top level? I probably think we're gonna let's just put it here for now. So I'm gonna add Firebase config.ts file, and within that Firebase config file we will now pretty much add this configuration block. And in fact, I think we can mostly copy the stuff here. I guess Copilot would also be able to figure out everything that we want to do. So initialize app is required to set up our initial app, and I'm actually gonna say export const Firebase app. So we're going to use this in other places later. There are other ways. You could also have a context around your React application and provide it, but we just need to make sure that this is initialized before we actually use it, and otherwise you really get into a lot of trouble, and I've seen other people have problems with this as well. So what I want to add get auth as well. I don't think, or maybe we can also see how the Firebase, the Firestore database looks. But this is first of all required to use Firebase authentication. Get auth, and then we do the same thing we did before. We say get auth. And now we don't pass the configuration, but we pass in our Firebase app. And we will also say this is Firebase auth. So this is everything we would need for authentication. We could now use this provider here in all of our pages and we would be fine. Now, if you want to add more, if you, for example, want to use storage, if you want to use the database, you would just go ahead and add more of these, like get Firestore from Firestore. And then you could export another const like the Firestore DB using get Firestore. And with this configuration in place, we can just import it whenever we need it. Now, additionally, to make this work with Expo, we need to run one other command, which is npx expo customize our metro config. You might notice that we don't even have a metro config yet, but now we actually do have one. However, we still need to update that configuration. So let's do it. So we need to change this this, let me show you how the change version looks. We do have the same import and we do have the export, but now we're also using a default config. And this is how it should look like in the end. This is also described in the expo documentation. With that in place, we can actually implement our authentication. So let's create a new file at app/screens/login.tsx. Quick little tip, if you do it like this in Visual Studio Code, it actually creates the file right here and you don't need to manually create the folders, which also usually never works for me. React Native functional export component, login, and there we go. And now we can already tell our app.tsx that we probably want to show this login. But the problem right now is that we haven't set up our stack navigation. Do we want to build the login? No, we can't build a login without the stack navigation, right? So let's do this. In our app, which is the entry point to our application right now, we're gonna wrap the whole application with the navigation container. And within that navigation container, we will put a stack navigator. So we haven't actually created that stack. So Copilot, are you up to what I want to do? I want to create a stack, and yes, this is almost. I want to create the create native stack container. That's cool because we're building a native app here. So now I can say stack.navigator, and I want to say the initial route name is gonna be login. Exactly. We can close this, and we don't really have any kind of logic yet. That's the word I was looking for. So we're gonna do it like this. We're gonna say this is our login. The component is the login, so we need to import that. And once we get that, I think we're fine. Yes, we can see our login. If you don't like the header, you can use the options here. So saying something like header shown false. Falser. Oh, is this a way to make something even falsier? I've never seen that before. That should be enough for now, so that we can focus on our initial login page. So what we want to do on this page is, of course, we need a bit of state handling. So let's add email, password, and set loading using use state. And what we also need is our authentication. So I'm gonna say const auth equals Firebase. Yeah, almost. So in a lot of examples, you're gonna see that it's using the Firebase package directly. However, we are exporting our instance already from here, so we can just use that instance now. So we can say Firebase auth in here, and we're just reusing that instance that was initialized in the beginning. So therefore, we don't have to create this again. For our login, we probably need a nice view. So let's say, oh, we don't even have the styles yet, right? Quickly add a few styles here. And style sheet, oh, come on. Couldn't you import that automatically? Why always me? So I'm just gonna give the container a bit of flex. And I'm gonna put the style here for the container. Styles.container. That should center our login. Inside of the login, I'm gonna add a text input. I wonder if Copilot is able to figure out what I want to do. I'm gonna give it a style. Should be not today. Styles.input. Come on, I can't see my keyboard. There we go. Okay, this is our text input for the email. We can of course make this a bit better. So we can say placeholder email and auto capitalize none. And additionally, I need the on change text to update our state. So on change text, text, and then we're gonna use set email. Where's Copilot today? This is like the easiest task I've done for a long time. I don't know what's going on. I'm gonna set the value also to email. Okay, cool. This is our first input. We need a second of them. So let's add a second one. I'm gonna put this below it. This will be a tiny bit different since this will be password. And then we need to make sure that the placeholder, it can be password as well. Auto capitalize none. On change text, set password. And of course, for password, what we also need to set is right here, secure text entry true, to make sure it looks like this and not like that. Okay, great. Finally, we probably need a button. which should be dependent on our loading state. So if we're loading, I of course want to have a little activity indicator, size large, style, color like this. Copilot, you're already doing way too much for me. You're doing way too much. I don't want this yet. In the other case, what I want to have is I want 2 buttons, and I want to surround them with a little fragment here, because then I can have 2 buttons. This one will be titled login, and on press I want to call my login function. So I'm going to come up with a function const sign in async, and of course if you want to have a better state handling, you could also use React hook forms or something. Oh, that was nice code. We're going to check out if this is correct. I don't know exactly, but it was a nice snippet, definitely. We also need const sign up equals async function, set loading, and then come on, just to give me the whole block like we had before. You already did a good job. Yeah, we want to catch the error, and finally I'm gonna set loading to false, and then I'm gonna close the function. His Copilot is doing all this stuff for me today. However, we don't do it like this anymore. So you see, we got a red line. Because we're not using it like this with the latest versions of Firebase anymore. How you do it is actually you directly import this function. We can from Firebase auth or at Firebase auth. Good question. Let's try this one. And then we're going to see that as the first argument, we have to pass in auth. And this is different to how it used to be in the past. And a lot of problems had problems with this. A lot of people. So what we're going to do is we're going to pass in our own auth instance here as the first parameter, and then email and password after that. We're going to catch the stuff. We're probably going to add a little alert here, like check your emails, or if we have a problem here, we're going to probably say registration failed for some reason. And of course, I used the wrong one because this is sign in failed. Oh, what's your problem with the error? Let's just make this any for now. And for sign in, we of course also don't want to check our emails. There's pretty much nothing we need to do. But for sign up, I'm now going to copy this because this looks kind of strange. So sign up. And then we import the other function, which is not sign up, but create user, of course. Create user with email and password. And again, as the first parameter, we have to pass in the auth instance and then email and password. In that case, we should probably say check your emails, because that's usually what you want to do. Here we have an alert and our loading. Why is the page still red? Okay, yeah, because I messed up. So login will use my sign in. Cannot find name button. Come on, just add it from React Native. And there we go. Nice. And then of course I want a second button. And the second button will use sign up. In fact, we could make this a bit shorter. Sign in. We don't need the arrow function here. And then call this create account. And there we go. We're ready to create our account with Firebase. Let's give it a try. Sign in failed because the auth configuration not found. Very good problem. If you want to use Firebase authentication, let's close this. You gotta go to build authentication and enable it. Just like you need to enable this if you want to use the Firestore, if you want to use file upload or anything like that. And we're gonna add the email and password provider. I'm not gonna use anything else today. This should be enough. And now let's see, simon@devdactic.com. I should use my new email, simon@galaxies.dev. Yeah, you can reach me at simon@galaxies, because my name is actually Simon, not Simon with an A. That was a stupid nickname I picked. Okay, create account. Let's try login first. Okay, sign in failed, user not found. Great. Create account. Check your emails. Nice. At this point, you should see a user in your Firebase authentication tab right here. But there's one more thing I wanted to tell you, and that is, if we do this on a device, we can sometimes encounter problems with the keyboard. So recommendation for these kind of views is to surround this with a keyboard avoiding view. I'm going to set the behavior. Yeah, that was the right one. Why did I click this away? I want to use padding. That should be fine. And then I'm going to wrap this all around my stuff in here. So I don't see the problem right now because we've positioned it quite nicely, but now it will move up the input a bit if otherwise we would overlay it. Cool, so that means we do have a user now, and the interesting part about authentication is now how we can use it. So we go back to our app.tsx. We now want to have like a little inside page. I'm just gonna call this, let's call this one list.tsx, React Native functional export list. And I'm also gonna add another details page just for the fun. React Native functional export details. Okay, cool. And back to our navigation. So as you know, you can have different ways, different stacks in your app. So I'm just gonna create an inside stack, and we could do this in another file if you want to split this up as well. And we also gonna create a new function and call this inside layout. So this is what you could probably do in a different file. And this inside layout will use our inside stack navigator, and will have the different screens like my to-dos, using the list component, and then probably also having, of course, I want to have the details page in here as well. So I'm gonna name this one details, and using the details page. Cool. And we can now automatically listen to the state changes right here at the top level of our application, and we don't need to manually route the user around in case the state changes. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a user right like this. We can in fact have types in here, so there should be a user that we can import from Firebase Authentication, or it is null, of course. Thanks, I hate this. Sometimes I hate that plugin. Use state, yes, and user, yes, add import from Firebase auth. So there is a user object, and that user object has some information, and we can use that as a type. And now the only thing we need to do is we can use effect, close this, and we don't really want any dependency in here. And what we're going to do is we're going to use on auth state changed. So when the state changes, we're passing in as a first argument our Firebase authentication once again, and then we get a user at this point. So I'm going to add a console log here, console log user, exactly, user, and then we can close it. So whenever the user changes now in our application, this log would be triggered. Can we see this in our logs here? In fact, we see already the user was changed right here, because if you create a user with create account, it is immediately signed in. So that means we do have a user at this point, and we can now use that user. So set user, and in our stack screen, we can now check if we do have a user. In that case, I do something, otherwise I do something else. So in the case I don't have a user, it becomes easy. We're reusing the same stuff like we had before. What are you mad about right now? Let's probably implement this first part here. Yeah, then it becomes better. So what we're gonna do here is we of course use our inside layout now. That means if we have a user, we just show a different kind of stack. Header shown false. Yeah, we can probably keep it like that. Otherwise, we I think get problems. And this should be name. Let's call this inside. If I say true, I assume that we have, yeah, we see this inside header, and usually you don't want to have this. Also, I don't want to have all of this in one line. I don't know what kind of syntax highlighting or formatting this is today, but this is definitely not right. Why is everything on one line? It usually breaks up after like 5 characters, and today it's everything in one line. I don't know. But nonetheless, we see we do have a user right here, and it immediately brings us inside. Actually, in fact, I think there's a way, but we're gonna see the change. Probably we're gonna see the change animated anyway. Let's go to that inside page, to that list page, because we need a way to sign out. So in order to sign out, we on this page need access to navigation. The navigation from React Navigation is usually passed down to the component. So I can access it like this, navigation. And if I'm lazy, I could say any, and everything would be fine. However, what I would recommend is you can simply add an interface for the router props, and this also makes it easier in case you're actually passing some data to your components later. And now you also get the typings right on this page. Additionally, I want to import my Firebase authentication once again. And in that view, what I'm now going to do is I will just have 2 buttons here. One will navigate us to the details page, and one will use sign out. So let's try this. For the details page, I can just go to details. You can style that page however you want. I just want to show that we now have an inside area, and in that inside area, we have our own stack navigation. If I hit logout, what happens is that I'm brought back to the login screen. Can I go back like this? No, of course I can't. And if I now reload the application, I will once again be on the login. So let's try my login and see if it works the other way around. I actually used simon@galaxies.dev, login, and it's loading and it's bringing me inside. Why is it bringing me inside? Well, because we initially had no user was null. And then it changed. Then it changed to email verified and the token and all the information. Then we logged out here that we don't really want anymore. And then it automatically changes to our inside layout. And that, my friend, is how we can implement authentication with Firebase. It really basically comes down to this line. So I don't know why this took me like 20 minutes to explain, but I wanted to go through all the necessary steps of the different layouts. And yeah, I haven't even defined the right params here, so that can be a bit more TypeScript fun, defining the param list so we got the screens typed correctly. However, the most important part is really listening to on-auth state changed, and of course also on the different screens using the functions. So also if we now want to work with a database, I think I did this in another video or live stream or something, check out the videos on the channel, how I work with documents inside Firebase. These are all now using the latest version, these functions. So it's just sign in with email, add document, remove document, list document, and as the first argument you would pass in authentication, or just like we already prepared, the Firestore DB if you want to interact with that database. If you enjoyed this video, also check out galaxies.dev where the written version of this post is, and if you subscribe you can just create a free account as a member, maybe even connect to GitHub so you can access all the source code. And if you're interested, we got tons of pro courses on very specific topics, so feel free to go pro. And of course, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, share it with your friends if it was great, and let me know in the comments if you want to see anything else about React Native and Firebase, and I will make it work. So until next time, happy coding, Simon.